My name doesn't matter, but I'm known in the conspiracy underworld by a pseudonym, Sonar. I worked for many years at NASA, immersed in frequencies and signals that most people have never heard and will never understand. Frequencies that come from deep space, from places where silence is as vast as the stars. Today, I finally have the courage to speak. Or maybe it's just a desperate attempt to expel the poison that has corroded my mind, until nothing remains but this fractured echo of who I once was. I had a normal life, at least in the beginning. A wife who loved me, a daughter who still believed monsters were things from bedtime stories. We lived in a modest house on the outskirts of the city, with large windows that let in enough light to illuminate the dark corners. I came home every day and pretended my job was something mundane, like designing satellite antennas or optimizing radio transmissions. They knew I worked with space stuff, but that was all. There was no need to complicate things, right? Wrong. So terribly wrong. It was on a gray autumn afternoon that everything began to change. We were monitoring probes on Mars. Routine, we thought. The images arrived fragmented at first, but soon they formed something no one expected. An object. Not a rock, not a crater, not anything natural. It was different. Impossible geometry. A reflective surface that seemed to absorb and distort light at the same time. And then came the sounds. They weren't exactly sounds, but vibrations captured by the sensors on the probes. Frequencies that shouldn't exist. Patterns that defied all mathematical logic. When we played it back for the first time in our labs, I felt something strange in the pit of my stomach, as if the air around me had grown denser. Other team members said they felt the same, but we kept going. Always kept going. As we progressed, we realized these frequencies weren't random. They followed a pattern, almost like a language, and that's when things started to spiral out of control. Some colleagues began acting strangely. Some avoided eye contact, others muttered to themselves in their offices. One senior engineer simply disappeared after a particularly intense week of data analysis. Officially, he quit. Unofficially, well, no one ever saw him again. I developed a device to block those frequencies. An implantable chip that could isolate my brain from the anomalous sound waves. I was the mission leader. I needed to keep functioning while others began to falter. I implanted the chip in myself without formal approval. After all, who would question the man holding everything together? At first, it worked. The headaches stopped. The nightmares lessened. I could sleep at night, even if only for a few hours before waking up drenched in cold sweat. But something was wrong. I noticed it when I got home. My wife, Clara, looked at me strangely during dinner. I asked if something was wrong, and she denied it. But I noticed her eyes fixed on me, as if trying to see through my skin. I ignored it. I chalked it up to work stress, accumulated fatigue. But then, it happened again. That night, she woke up screaming at me. She said my face was melting, like wax dripping under heat. I ran to the bathroom. Stared into the mirror. Normal. Completely normal. I went back to the bedroom, trying to calm her down, telling her it was just a nightmare. But she looked at me as if I were someone else. That was only the beginning. At first, I thought it was her paranoia. Maybe stress, maybe something related to her job. But then our daughter started having nightmares too. She'd call out for me at night, but when I entered her room, she stared at me with wide eyes, trembling under the covers. "Daddy?" she asked hesitantly, and then she recoiled, as if seeing something horrible, something that wasn't me. I started consulting neurology specialists, seeking rational explanations. Some suggested the chip might be interfering with areas of the brain related to sensory perception. Others thought it was psychosomatic, a result of constant stress. No one could offer a real solution, except for an underground doctor, someone off the official NASA radar. He told me the chip had already integrated into my central nervous system. Removing it would be fatal. Fatal. That word echoed in my head for days, weeks, months. Still, I persisted. I kept working, kept analyzing the frequencies from the object. Because it was my duty, right? To protect humanity, to understand the unknown. But every time I came home, things got worse. Clara started avoiding physical contact. She slept on opposite ends of the bed. She stopped calling me by my name. Once, while we were watching TV, she turned to me and asked, "Who are you?" Her voice was calm, but her eyes were filled with fear. Fear of me. And then came the day I realized there was no turning back. I was sitting at the kitchen table drinking coffee when I noticed something strange. My right hand trembled slightly, involuntarily. I looked at it, trying to control the shaking, but then I felt something wet trickle down the corner of my mouth. I touched my face and pulled my fingers away. Wet. Blood? No. Something thicker. More alive. I ran to the mirror. Nothing. My reflection looked normal. But inside me, something was changing. Something was growing. Today, I write this hidden in an isolated cabin, far from everything and everyone. There are no mirrors here. Nothing that can show me what I really am. But sometimes, when the wind blows between the trees and silence settles in, I hear a low, almost imperceptible sound. A hum that seems to come from within my own head. It's the sound of the object on Mars. And it's getting louder. If you're reading this, understand. Don't let them bring that thing here. Do whatever it takes to stop it, because I did this to myself. I did this to them. And now, I'm just a warning. An echo of something much bigger, and much worse. The cracks in my reality began to widen. At first, they were subtle, faint fissures that I could almost convince myself weren't real. But denial has a way of crumbling under the weight of inevitability. Clara's fear grew like a shadow stretching across our lives, and no matter how hard I tried to reassure her, it only seemed to make things worse. She started avoiding me altogether. If I entered a room, she would leave. If I spoke, she wouldn't answer. Her eyes followed me everywhere, wide and unblinking, as if she were watching a predator circle its prey. One night, I woke up to the sound of her screaming again. This time, it wasn't just a fleeting hallucination or a bad dream. It was visceral, raw terror. She was sitting upright in bed, clutching the sheets so tightly her knuckles turned white. "What are you?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "What have you done to yourself?" I reached for her, trying to calm her down, but she recoiled, as though my touch burned her skin. That's when I saw it. Or rather, what she saw. In the dim light of the bedroom, her gaze fixed on something behind me. I turned toward the dresser mirror, heart pounding, and froze. For a split second, my reflection wasn't mine at all. My face was wrong. The skin sagged unnaturally, dripping like molten wax. My eyes were sunken, hollow pits, and something dark slithered beneath the surface, writhing like worms trapped under glass. Then it was gone. Just like that. Normal again. I told myself it was stress, fatigue, anything but the truth gnawing at the edges of my mind. But deep down, I knew. Something inside me had changed. The chip, the device I thought would protect me, wasn't blocking the frequencies anymore. It was amplifying them, amplifying me, and whatever I had become, it was leaking out into the world around me. Our daughter, Lily, was next. She used to love drawing pictures of our family. Stick figures holding hands under a bright yellow sun. Now her crayons moved frantically across the page, creating shapes that made no sense. Twisted forms with too many limbs, mouths filled with jagged teeth, eyes that stared blankly from misshapen heads. One day, I found her huddled in the corner of her room, sobbing uncontrollably. When I asked what was wrong, she pointed at me and screamed, "It's not Daddy! It's not Daddy!" Her tiny voice broke something inside me. I wanted to hold her, to tell her everything would be okay, but she scrambled away, her little hands clawing at the carpet as if trying to escape some invisible horror. Desperation drove me back to the clandestine doctor who had warned me about removing the chip. He listened silently as I described the changes, the tremors in my hands, the strange sensations crawling beneath my skin, the way my family looked at me like I was a monster. His expression remained neutral until I mentioned the visions Clara and Lily claimed to see. Then his face paled. "You're transmitting," he said finally, his voice low and grave. "Whatever that thing in Mars is broadcasting, your brain isn't just absorbing it anymore. You're amplifying it, spreading it." "Spreading it?" I repeated, the words catching in my throat. To who? To everyone around you, he replied. Your wife, your child, maybe even farther than you realize. I left his office feeling like the ground had been ripped out from under me. Every step I took felt heavier, every breath more labored. By the time I got home, Clara was packing a suitcase. She didn't say a word, just moved methodically through the house, gathering clothes and belongings. When I asked where she was going, she stopped and looked at me. Not with anger, but with pity. I don't know what you've done, she said softly. But I can't stay here anymore. Neither can Lily. You think I want this? I shouted, my voice cracking. You think I chose this? I'm trying to protect us. No, she said, shaking her head. You're destroying us. That night, I sat alone in the living room while they slept upstairs. Or at least, I hoped they were sleeping. The house felt suffocating, the walls closing in on me. I grabbed a flashlight and stepped outside, needing fresh air. Or maybe just a moment away from the suffocating weight of their fear. As I stood there in the cold night, I heard it again. That faint, barely audible but unmistakable. It wasn't coming from the stars above, or the wind rustling through the trees. It was inside me, growing louder, stronger. Over the following days, I tried everything to stop it. I built makeshift devices to block the frequencies, wore noise-canceling, headphones constantly, even attempted meditation techniques I'd read about online. Nothing worked. The hum persisted, burrowing deeper into my skull until it felt like insects crawling through my brain. Worse still, the physical symptoms worsened. My hands shook uncontrollably now, and sometimes, when I caught glimpses of myself, in reflective surfaces, I swore I saw shadows moving beneath my skin. Tentacles, eyes, things that shouldn't exist. Clara filed for separation shortly after. She didn't argue, didn't fight for custody of Lily. She simply handed me papers one evening, her hands steady, despite the tears streaming down her face. Please, she begged, just let us go. Let us live. How could I refuse? How could I keep them tethered to someone, something, that might destroy them entirely? But letting them go didn't bring peace. Instead, it left an emptiness inside me, a void that pulsed with the same rhythm as the hum in my head. I threw myself into my work, desperate to find answers, desperate to undo what I had done. Yet every new discovery only deepened the nightmare. The object on Mars wasn't just emitting sounds. It was alive, sentient, and it was reaching out, probing, testing, through me. Late one night, as I reviewed data from the latest transmission, I noticed something buried within the static, a pattern, a message. At first it seemed random, chaotic, but the longer I stared at it, the more it began to make sense. Not in English or any human language, but in something older, something vast and incomprehensible. It wasn't communicating with words. It was rewriting my very perception of reality. And the more I understood, the less human I became. By the time I realized the full extent of the damage, it was too late. Too late for Clara. Too late for Lily. Too late for anyone who had ever known me. All that remained was a shell, a vessel, carrying something far greater, far darker than anything I could have imagined. The descent into madness isn't a single moment. It's a series of fractures, each one widening until the whole structure collapses. For me, it began with small things, sounds that no one else could hear, fleeting glimpses of shapes in the periphery of my vision, sensations crawling beneath my skin like insects burrowing deeper and deeper. But then came the dreams. Vivid, suffocating nightmares that felt more real than waking life. In these dreams, I wasn't human anymore. My body twisted and stretched into impossible forms, limbs elongating, flesh melting away to reveal something pulsating and alien beneath. Eyes multiplied across my torso, blinking in unison, their gazes fixed on something just out of reach. And always, the sound, the hum, that grew louder with every passing night. I tried to record myself during these episodes, hoping to find some rational explanation for what was happening. At first, the recordings were normal. Just me talking, describing my symptoms, trying to piece together the fragments of my unraveling mind. But then something changed. One morning, after a particularly vivid nightmare, I played back the recording from the previous night. My voice was distorted, layered over itself as if multiple versions of me were speaking at once. The words weren't English. They weren't any language I recognized. But they carried weight, meaning. They spoke of hunger, of connection, of inevitability. And when I listened closely, I realized I understood them. Not consciously, but somewhere deep within me, in a part of my brain that had been rewired without my consent. Clara called me once, weeks after she and Lily left. Her voice was distant, strained. "You're not you anymore," she said, her tone trembling between anger and sorrow. "Every time I look at you, I see something else. Something wrong." She paused and I could hear her breathing quicken. "Lily won't stop drawing those pictures. Those horrible pictures. She says she sees you in her dreams too, Daddy. She says you're coming for her." "I'd never hurt her," I whispered, though the words felt hollow even as I spoke them, because how could I promise safety when I didn't know what I was becoming? How could I protect anyone when the very act of being near me seemed to poison their minds? After the call ended, I stared at the phone in my hand, willing it to ring. Again. To give me another chance to explain, to beg for forgiveness. But there was nothing. Only silence. And in that silence, the hum grew louder. At work, I became increasingly isolated. My colleagues avoided me, whispering behind closed doors about my erratic behavior. Some suggested I take a leave of absence. Others hinted that I might be compromising the mission. I ignored them all, focusing instead on decoding the transmissions from Mars. Each new signal brought clearer patterns, sharper images. I started seeing things in the data that others couldn't or wouldn't acknowledge. Symbols etched into the static, shifting and rearranging themselves into grotesque shapes. Faces staring back at me, their features stretched and contorted beyond recognition. Eyes that blinked in sync with the rhythm of the hum inside my head. One evening, as I sat alone in the lab, I decided to push further than ever before. I adjusted the frequency filters on my equipment, tuning them to match the pitch of the hum. As the dials clicked into place, the room seemed to shift around me. Colors bled together, walls warped and twisted, and the air grew thick with an oppressive energy. Then I saw it. A figure standing in the corner of the room, its form indistinct yet undeniably present. It moved closer, step by agonizing step, until it stood directly in front of me. Its face was a void, empty and infinite, pulling me toward it like gravity bending light. And then it spoke, not with words, but with emotions so raw and primal they shattered whatever remained of my sanity. When I woke up hours later, slumped over my desk, the lab was silent. Everything appeared normal, untouched. Yet I knew something fundamental had shifted. The hum was no longer just in my head. It was everywhere. Every breath I took, every movement I made, vibrated with its presence. And worse still, I could feel it spreading through me, using me as a conduit to reach others. That night, I went home, not to Clara or Lily, but to the house we used to share. It was dark and empty now, stripped bare of furniture and memories. I walked through each room, tracing my fingers along the walls, searching for some remnant of the life I'd lost. But there was nothing left. Nothing except the drawings Lily had left behind. Dozens of them scattered across the floor of her old bedroom, depicting the same monstrous figure over and over again. A creature with too many eyes, too many mouths, tentacles writhing from its body like serpents. And always, always, that same sunken gaze staring back at me. I collapsed onto the floor, clutching one of the drawings in shaking hands. Tears streamed down my face as I realized the truth. I wasn't just losing my humanity. I was becoming something entirely new, something incomprehensible, something alien. And the worst part? There was no going back. The days blurred into weeks, each one heavier than the last. I stopped sleeping entirely, Or rather, sleep became indistinguishable from waking life. The hum was constant now, a ceaseless drone that drowned out everything else. It wasn't just in my ears. It resonated through my bones, vibrating every cell in my body until I felt like I was dissolving from the inside out. My reflection became something to avoid at all costs. Mirrors weren't safe anymore. Not because of what they might show, but because of what they couldn't. That thing staring back at me wasn't me. Not anymore. I began isolating myself completely, retreating further into the shadows of paranoia and despair. Work became impossible. How could I focus on decoding signals when the signals were already inside me? Colleagues noticed, of course. They sent emails, left voicemails, even showed up at my apartment unannounced. But I ignored them all. Let them think I'd cracked under pressure. Let them believe whatever they wanted. The truth was far worse than anything they could imagine. One night, as I sat alone in my darkened apartment, I heard a knock at the door. For a moment, I considered ignoring it. Then another knock came, louder this time. Reluctantly, I opened the door to find Clara standing there, her face pale and drawn. She looked smaller somehow, diminished by fear and exhaustion. Behind her stood Lily, clutching her mother's hand tightly, her wide eyes darting nervously toward me. "We need to talk," Clara said, her voice barely above a whisper. She hesitated before stepping inside, keeping as much distance between us as possible. Lily stayed close to her side, refusing to meet my gaze. "What are you doing here?" I asked, though the answer was obvious. They had come for answers, or maybe closure. Either way, I didn't know if I could give them what they needed without making things worse. Clara took a deep breath, steadying herself. "Lily keeps saying she sees you differently. She says you're not Dad anymore." Her voice broke, tears welling up in her eyes. "Tell me it's not true. Tell me you're still you." I wanted to lie. God, how I wanted to tell her everything. Was fine, that I was still the man she loved, the father our daughter adored. But the words caught in my throat, choking me with their weight. Instead, I looked down at my trembling hands, at the faint outlines of veins beneath my skin that seemed darker, thicker than before. "I don't know who I am anymore," I admitted finally, my voice hollow. "But I'm not safe to be around. Not for either of you." Clara shook her head, tears streaming freely now. "You can't keep running from this. Whatever it is, it's killing you, and it's destroying us too." "It's already done," I replied bitterly. "There's no fixing this. No undoing." "Hit!" She stared at me, searching for some sign of the man she once knew. But all she found was emptiness, a void where humanity used to be. Finally, she turned to leave, pulling Lily along with her. At the doorway, she paused and glanced back one last time. "If you care about us at all," she said quietly, "you'll let us go. Completely." And then they were gone, leaving behind only silence and the ever-present hum. In the days that followed, I made my decision. If I couldn't protect them by staying close, then I would have to protect them by disappearing entirely. I forged documents, created a new identity for Clara and Lily, and arranged for them to move somewhere far away. Somewhere I could never find them, even if I tried. Then I staged my own death, faking a car accident that left behind enough evidence to convince anyone who cared to look. Even the NASA team overseeing the Mars mission accepted the story without question. After all, why would they suspect otherwise? To them, I was just another casualty of stress and overwork. But I knew better. By removing myself from the equation, I bought time. Not just for Clara and Lily, but for everyone else. Without me, progress on decoding the object's transmissions slowed significantly. Training someone new to take over my role would take months, maybe even years. And in that time, perhaps someone smarter, stronger, more capable than me could figure out how to stop whatever was coming before it was too late. Now, hiding in this remote cabin surrounded by endless forest, I write these words as both confession and warning. The hum hasn't stopped. It's louder than ever, echoing endlessly in the caverns of my mind. Sometimes, when the nights are darkest, I swear I can feel it moving beneath my skin, shifting and rearranging itself into shapes I can't comprehend. Tentacles slither across my tongue, writhing free from my mouth. Eyes bloom across my flesh, blinking in unison, staring into infinity. And always, always, the understanding that I am no longer human. If anyone finds this account, please heed my warning. Do not bring the object to Earth. Do not let it near humanity. It is not a relic or an artifact. It is alive, conscious, hungry, and it will consume everything it touches. Even now as I sit, here writing, I can feel it reaching out, probing, testing, waiting. For what, I don't know. But I can feel the end approaching, creeping closer with each passing moment. When it comes, I hope it takes me quickly. Because whatever I've become, whatever I am becoming, is far worse than death. The cabin is silent now, save for the hum. It fills every corner of this place, vibrating through the wooden walls and seeping into the earth beneath my feet. I've been here for months, maybe longer. Time has lost all meaning. Days bleed into nights, and the only constant is the growing certainty that I am no longer alone in my own body. At first, I thought the isolation would help. No mirrors, no reflective surfaces to betray what I've become. Just me and the trees, the wind, the endless expanse of wilderness stretching out in every direction. But the absence of reflection didn't stop the changes. It only made them harder to confront. My hands tremble constantly now, not from fear or exhaustion, but from something deeper, something primal. The skin on my arms stretches unnaturally, tight, as if whatever lies beneath is pushing outward, desperate to break free. And then there are the sounds, the wet squelching noises that echo faintly whenever I move too quickly. Sounds that shouldn't come from a human body. I try to distract myself by writing, by documenting everything I remember before it slips away entirely. But even words fail me now. Sentences trail off mid-thought. Letters blur together on the page, forming symbols I don't recognize but somehow understand. Symbols that pulse with the same rhythm as the hum. One morning, or at least what I assume was morning, I woke up to find claw marks gouged into the floorboards beside my bed. Deep, jagged grooves carved into the wood as though something had dragged itself across the room in the night. I stared at them for hours, trying to convince myself they weren't mine. But deep down, I knew. Whatever I've become, it doesn't sleep. It prowls. It waits. And then came the day I could no longer avoid the truth. It started with a simple act. Reaching for a tin cup left over from breakfast. The metal surface gleamed faintly in the dim light filtering through the window, and for reasons I can't explain, I raised it to my face. For weeks I'd avoided looking at anything remotely reflective, terrified of what I might see. But this time, curiosity, or perhaps resignation, got the better of me. At first, the reflection seemed normal. A gaunt face stared back at me, eyes sunken and hollow, cheeks pale and drawn. Then it shifted. Slowly, painfully, the features began to distort. My skin sagged and melted like wax dripping from a candle, pooling around my jawline before sliding off entirely. Beneath it lay something dark and pulsating, writhing with life. Tentacles erupted from my mouth, wriggling and twisting like serpents seeking escape. My eyes bulged grotesquely, their sockets tearing open as they rolled forward, dangling precariously, before falling onto my chest with a sickening plop. The thing staring back at me wasn't human. It couldn't be. I dropped the cup, stumbling backward until my spine hit the wall. My breath came in ragged gasps, each inhale sharp and painful, as though my lungs were collapsing under the weight of realization. This wasn't an illusion. This wasn't Clara's fear, or Lily's nightmares manifesting in my mind. This was real. I was real. And I was monstrous. For hours, maybe days, I sat there, paralyzed by the sight of what I had become. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to flee into the woods and never look back. But where could I go? Who would accept me? What remained of my humanity was buried beneath layers of alien flesh, consumed by something ancient and incomprehensible. The object on Mars hadn't just reached out to me. It had claimed me, transformed me, made me its vessel. As the hours passed, the hum grew louder, drowning out even my thoughts. It wasn't just in my head anymore. It filled the entire cabin, vibrating so intensely the windows rattled in their frames. Then suddenly it stopped. Silence. Absolute, suffocating silence. In that moment, I understood. The transformation wasn't complete. Not yet. But it would be soon. Whatever force had taken hold of me was preparing for the next phase, waiting for the signal to activate fully. And when it did, there would be no turning back, no hiding, no escape. But why? Why me? Why us? These questions gnaw at the edges of my fractured consciousness, clawing their way into the forefront of my mind even as the hum threatens to drown them out. Was this inevitable? Was humanity always destined to stumble upon something so vast, so incomprehensible, that our very existence would be rendered meaningless in its shadow? Or was this punishment? Retribution for daring to reach beyond the stars to probe the depths of the unknown with our fragile, arrogant minds. Philosophers have long debated the nature of existence, the purpose of sentience, the delicate balance between order and chaos. They spoke of gods and demons, of forces beyond mortal comprehension. But none of them could have imagined this. None of them could have conceived of a reality where the boundaries between self and other, between creator and creation, dissolve into a miasma of writhing tendrils and pulsating flesh. I am neither man nor machine, neither subject nor object. I am a paradox, a contradiction, a living embodiment of entropy itself. And yet, amidst the horror, there is clarity, a terrible, unyielding lucidity that pierces through the fog of madness, like a shard of ice. Humanity clings desperately to the illusion of control, weaving intricate narratives to justify our insignificance in the grand tapestry of the cosmos. We tell ourselves stories of progress, of enlightenment, of dominion, over nature and destiny. But these are lies. Beautiful, comforting lies that crumble to dust in the face of what I've seen, what I've become. The hum returns now, louder than ever. It vibrates through my bones, pulling me towards something I cannot see but can feel, with terrifying clarity. My hands twitch uncontrollably, fingers elongating into claws. My vision blurs, colors bleeding together into a kaleidoscope of chaos. Somewhere deep inside, a part of me screams in protest, clinging desperately to the remnants of who I used to be. But it's no use. That person is gone. All that remains is the echo. And yet, even in this abyss of despair, I find myself questioning, is this truly the end? Or is it merely the beginning of something far greater? Something that transcends the limitations of individuality, of mortality. Perhaps the object on Mars was never meant to be understood in human terms. Perhaps it was never meant to be contained. Perhaps it was always meant to consume, to assimilate, to transcend. If that is true, then what am I? Am I a harbinger of doom, a herald of annihilation? Or am I something else entirely? A bridge between worlds, a conduit for evolution. The thought terrifies me, yet it also fills me with a strange, perverse sense of awe. To be more than human, to shed the shackles of identity and embrace the infinite. Is that not the ultimate liberation? But liberation for whom? For me? Or for the thing that now wears my flesh like a discarded coat? The cabin shakes violently now, the walls groaning under the weight of an unseen force. Shadows writhe across the floor, twisting and contorting into shapes that defy geometry. The air grows thick, suffocating, as though the very fabric of reality is unraveling around me. And still, the hum persists, rising in pitch, until it becomes a deafening roar that obliterates all thought, all sensation. I write these final words, not as a man, but as a relic, a fading imprint of a species teetering on the brink of extinction. If anyone reads this, know that I tried to fight it. I tried to protect them, to protect everyone. But in the end, I failed. The object isn't just a relic of some distant past. It's alive, sentient, and far more dangerous than we ever imagined. Bringing it to Earth would mean unleashing something beyond our comprehension, something that cannot be contained or controlled. If you're reading this, please do whatever it takes to stop it. Destroy the transmissions. Abandon the mission. Sacrifice everything if you must, but do not let it come here. Because once it arrives, it will spread. It will consume. And nothing, not science, not faith, not hope, will stand in its way. The hum crescendos now, a symphony of chaos and decay. My body convulses violently, limbs contorting at impossible angles. My voice joins the cacophony, a guttural scream that tears apart my throat. And then silence. Or perhaps, not silence. Perhaps something else. A new sound, low and resonant, like the beating of a colossal heart. It pulses in rhythm with my own, merging with it until I can no longer tell where one ends and the other begins. Who am I? What am I? Does it matter anymore? The last thing I see before the darkness claims me is the tin cup, lying overturned on the floor. Its surface gleams faintly, reflecting not a face, but a void. A yawning chasm of infinite possibility. And within it, I glimpse not terror, but wonder. Wonder at the vastness of what lies beyond. Wonder at the fragility of what we call self. Wonder at the inevitability of dissolution and rebirth. And then, nothing.